Tennessee basketball's loss to to Houston signified the end of an era for two players. Two players who are very rare this day and age in college basketball. And when I say very rare, I mean they are starters who were 4-year players. Zakai Zeigler and Jahmai Mashack. Zakai Zeigler and Jahmai Mashack are everything you love about a college basketball player. Mashack was a 4-star, in case you guys forgot, and had to ride the bench a lot his first year. But he stayed at Tennessee because he believed in what Rick Barnes was going to develop him into, which many 4-stars wouldn't do. And in the process, he became one of the best defensive players in the nation this past year. All SEC defense, was named Defensive Player of the Year nationally by one service. Zakai Zeigler was an unrated recruit out of the Bronx, reclassified into the 2021 class and signed with Tennessee as just a late signee that no one thought about and was going to be the backup point, and immediately became the backup point guard to Kennedy Chandler, the 5-star one and done on that team. And people fell in love with Zakai Zeigler more than Chandler in that year, for those who don't forget. Zeigler and Mashack ended up having, by far, the most successful runs in Tennessee basketball history. They were the most successful 4-year players from a team perspective in Tennessee basketball history. So I just want to give you some thoughts on this real quick, guys. Before Zeigler and Mashack got to Knoxville, there had been players for Tennessee achieve 30-win seasons. There had been players for Tennessee get the Vols to a number 1 ranking. There had been players for Tennessee win the SEC tournament title. There had been players for Tennessee win the SEC regular season title. There had been players for Tennessee reach the Elite Eight. Nobody in Tennessee history had done all of those things. Nobody had done all of those things. In their 4 years at Tennessee, with the win over Kentucky on Friday in the Sweet 16, Zakai Zeigler and Jahmai Mashack ended up doing all those things. Also, there have been players for Tennessee get the Vols to number 1. This year alone, they accomplished 2 of those things by getting the Vols to number 1, the 3rd time in history Tennessee was at number 1, and also by getting to 30 wins. Most importantly, though, not most importantly, but even more standing out is that nobody at Tennessee had done those things multiple times. Now, Zeigler and Mashack accomplished some of those things only once, but they accomplished one of everything. The things they accomplished once were the number 1 ranking, the 30-win season, the SEC regular season title, which they won last year. They won it outright. And the SEC tournament title, which they won in 2022. What they also accomplished multiple times, though, was getting to the Elite Eight. No one had ever done that multiple times in Tennessee basketball history. They went to 3 straight Sweet 16s. No one's ever made 3 straight in Tennessee basketball history. These are the most accomplished team Vols in history, in the history of the program. And I think it speaks volumes because you can tell that a player like Zakai Zeigler is exactly the type of player that Rick Barnes loves coaching and the type of player that thrives in that system. He's 5'9". He was a 2-time SEC Defensive Player of the Year. He was all SEC and all SEC defense this year and 3rd-team All-American. And I don't know if he'll make it to the NBA because of his size, but nobody plays basketball the right way more than Zakai Zeigler, the way you can appreciate it. And then there was just this moment that I want to show yesterday, guys. Zakai Zeigler and Rick Barnes. This is after the tournament. Just take a look at this real quick.
Good luck. Hey, thank you.
I'm sorry, I had to show that. Zakai Zeigler, I think, immediately has elevated himself as the greatest point guard in Tennessee basketball history. There's no Tennessee basketball starting 5 in history all time that should not include Zakai Zeigler, specifically at the point. And that's crazy to think about because you have Grant Williams. If you do an all-time Tennessee starting 5, you got Grant Williams, Chris Lofton, Allen Houston, Bernard Keaton, Dale Ellis, Ernie Grunfeld. It's really hard to put together a top 5, particularly since you don't have a true center and you're loaded at certain positions. But if I were going to do an all-time Tennessee starting 5, I would have Zakai Zeigler at the point. I would have Chris Lofton at the 2. I would have Bernard King at the 3, obviously. Grant Williams at the 4. The question is who's at the 5, and then it gets a little bit tough because there's no true 5 in Tennessee history that would be on the all-time starting 5. But I think one of the ones you can do is probably Reggie Johnson, who was a true center for Tennessee. He was at 6'9", but it would be a little tough. I will say that Tennessee's never had like a true center. Could be the biggest reason they haven't actually ever won a national title or gone to the Final Four. But that's a different story altogether. But I mean, then you got to throw in Dalton Connect, people like that. Dalton Connect, Dale Ellis, Allen Houston. I mean, they're loaded with elite wings. 2 and 3 guards are loaded with, but Zakai Zeigler is on the all-time starting 5. That's a real standout thing to talk about. Look, Zakai Zeigler, we're not talking enough about everything he went through. If you guys don't remember, his first year at Tennessee, his house where he grew up burned down in a fire. He lost all of his family possessions. Dylan says Ron Slade the 5 since he's a friend of the show. Yeah, at 6'7" maybe. But Zakai Zeigler's lost all of his possessions his freshman year at Tennessee. And Tennessee fans came up to support him and put together a lot of money and support to help him and his family through that period. Rick Barnes is like a father figure to this guy. And remember this too, and I want to point this out about Zakai. This should tell you all you need to know about how he came in with the right mentality from the start. Rick Barnes is a believer of you earn your stripes when it comes to playing time. How do you earn your stripes? You show that you are committed to what he wants to coach. And it usually takes players a year that aren't 5-stars to figure out what he wants to coach, particularly on defense. Zakai Zeigler became a regular contributor his true freshman year as a reclassified, unrated point guard that was a high school age. That's how much Rick Barnes immediately fell in love with Zeigler, and the rest of the program at Tennessee did. Zakai Zeigler, to me, is like the Jawan Jennings of the Vols in basketball, in the sense that he's that type of player that you would want to run through a brick wall for. And then Jahmai Mashack developed into that too and fully embraced it. I think Jahmai Mashack and Zakai Zeigler deserve massive amounts of praise for what they did. You know, Dave and I talked one day, and we may go into this one day a little further, whether or not Zakai Zeigler's jersey should hang in the rafters. The problem with that is that there's already a number 5 in the rafters, which is Chris Lofton's, who was also beloved and also a guy who overcame certain limitations, particularly being undersized. But if anybody was worthy of also wearing number 5, that guy would probably be Zakai Zeigler. I mean, he's now the all-time leader in assists in the SEC. He was an absolute baller for the Vols. He was the leader of this team. Now, that's no knock on Charles Lanier, who I think did develop as time goes on into being tough in clutch situations and things like that. I'm not trying to knock that, but when things got tough, they turned to Zakai to get things going, and that never changed. So when you take that into account, Zakai Zeigler, I think, deserves, I mean, he deserves such a place in history that I don't know if he's going to get his due and his props, but this guy is a legend and his era should never be forgotten. Dylan Elam says put them side by side, Zakai and Chris Lofton's jersey. I kind of agree. Just have both number 5s retired. I mean, Lofton's jersey was retired while Zakai Zeigler was playing. That's why Zeigler ended up not doing it. But at this point, I think it's totally rational to put both of their jerseys side by side. I think they're just two of the greatest people to play at Tennessee. And Zakai Zeigler and Jahmai Mashack together, their legacies are untouched. They have done a lot for this program, and I don't think we should forget that.